Hi, fifth grade. Today we're going to be reading The Circuit, Chapter 7, Death Forgiven. So you should be on page 57. And here we go. El Perico was my close friend. My close friend had a tragic ending. He was a red, green, and yellow parrot that had been smuggled from Mexico by Don Pancho, an undocumented farm worker who was my father's friend. When we first got El Perico, he spent most of the time in a makeshift wire cage. Roberto, my older brother, built for him. But once he learned to trust us and he became a family member, El Perico wandered around freely in the dilapidated garage where we lived while harvesting Mr. Jacobson's vineyards. Whenever he was out of the cage, we closed the garage door, the only opening large enough for him to fly out. I and the rest of my family grew to love El Perico. I spent hours teaching him how to say Pequito Bonito. His favorite pastime was walking back and forth across a thin, long wire that my mother sometimes used for hanging our clothes to dry. It stretched from one end of the garage to the other. I would place a great box directly underneath El Perico, climb on it, stretch out my arms, and hold my index finger close to his toes so that he could perch on it. He would slowly walk sideways, tilting his head from side to side, repeating, Pequito Benito, Pequito Benito. And as he grabbed onto my finger, I would lift him and bring him close to my face, touching my nose to his beak. He would stare at me sideways and rub his beak against my nose until I would kiss his head. The affection El Perico and I had for each other was matched only by his attachment to Caterina, a spotted black cat that belonged to Chico and his wife Pilar, a young Mexican couple who, like the parrots, were undocumented. They lived in one of the stables next to our garage. Chico, Pilar, and Caterina visited us often in the evenings after work. El Perico and Caterina grew on each other little by little. Eventually, they became such good friends that they even ate leftovers, beans, rice, and potatoes from the same plates. When Chico and Pilar visited without Caterina, El Perico would get very upset. He would flap his wings and make such a loud, shrieking sound that it made the wire vibrate. This would irritate my father, who could not stand any noise, especially when he was tired from work, which was most of the time. One early evening, Chico and Pilar came by themselves without Caterina. El Perico immediately threw a tantrum and began shrieking louder than ever. The noise struck my father like lightning. He had been in such a terrible mood the last few days because he was not sure where we would work for now that the grape season was almost over. Covering his ears with his hands, he bolted to the corner of the garage, grabbed the broom, and swung with all his might at my friend who was perched on the wire. Red, green, and yellow feathers scattered everywhere. El Perico hit the dirt floor like a wet rag. Instantly, Roberto, Mama, and I started wailing. My father shouted at all of us to stop. Seeing a stream of blood dribble from El Perico's silent beak, I felt as though someone had ripped my heart out. I threw the garage door open and darted out, running as fast as I could toward a storage shed that was about half a mile away. The shouting, screaming, and crying from our home chased me. I wanted to escape, to die. I finally reached the shed, dragged myself in, and closed the door behind me. It was dark and quiet. I fell to my knees and prayed for El Perico. The repetition of Santa Maria, Madre de Dios, ruega, Señora, por nosotros los pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amen. Slowly comforted and soothed my soul, then I prayed for my father. The next day after work, Roberto, Trampita, and I buried El Perico in a cigar box we found in Mr. Jacobson's garage can. We dug a hole about a foot deep in one of the rows in the vineyard behind the garage, placed the box inside, and covered it with dirt. Roberto made a small cross from sticks and laid it on the mound. We stood there silently for several minutes and then went home. I visited his grave every day until he moved to Cocoran 2 weeks later to find work picking cotton. And that is the end of chapter 7.